got your paper signed real quick.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township, February 21st, 2023. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, if Pastor Sean Bussell with Bedford Alliance Church could open us up in prayer. Yep. Amen. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, item 2 is approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Okay, motion and support by Ms. Janizek. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Bushberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 3, consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to approve and place on file A, minutes from February 7th, 2023, regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, minutes from February 13th, 2023, special meeting of the Bedford Township Board. C, general savings, pooled funds and CD reports from the treasurer for January 2023. And D, the balance sheet and revenue expense report for the period ending January 31st, 2023.
Motion to approve the consent agenda is submitted.
Support. Okay, motion to support by Mr. Bruning. Discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Bushberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 4, Monroe County Sheriff's update. Your Sheriff Pauly, appreciate you being here.
Reveal on the hotel investigation. Our detective, Josh Modelis, did a tremendous job putting this together. He showed together a PowerPoint that was over 100 slides. We have to tear that down and shoot. We're going to actively review that. We still not got any prosecute, although they did say that. Your report is going to look different. So next month, the plan is to shut down a tractor system that generates this report that once they shut that server down, we're going to flip over to a report that's generated through our current reporting system. That's been in the works really since 2019. The benefits, so there's going to be some changes. Admittedly, I'm not sure what's going to be totally trouble with subject or anywhere in between.
Hold on one second. George, can you hear me? There's no volume to the viewers at home. That ain't gonna work. Might have to shut that one off. Might work.
You can hold it.
It's on.
Okay, let's try it again. Go ahead, buddy.
We good to go?
We'll see.
Start from the beginning?
No, you're good.
I lost my train of thought. So the new report is going to be total calls for service, anywhere from a trouble with subject to a murder, and all in between, including all the larcenies. So you're going to get a big total number, probably going to be in the 400 to 500 calls for service range. You're also going to get, which I think this is going to be really interesting to the public as well as the board, is reports. You'll get the nature of the call. So you'll be able to see that there's 20 larcenies, or there's 30 domestics, or whatever the number is. So I think that's going to be really interesting and revealing. I think we're kind of excited about that. We're excited about that for just the data that we get and the information that we can then try to deploy our resources in the correct manner. So we'll have that data, where it's occurring, and then we'll be able to kind of do a little bit better job of maybe being in those areas that are having higher crime. So it's all at our fingertips now. And then we're also going to get a comprehensive report of all of the arrests, including the crimes that were committed, that they're arrested for. So again, I think the public will be interested in that. Coming soon. It's not going to be. I'm not sure what the problem is. I know there's some. I'm not a computer guy, so I don't know what they do. But they got to create this report. We're going to be able to tie in citations issued and crash reports. So we should get so we're probably going to be without citations issued for a period of time. I don't know how long it's going to take. But the benefit of that is should get a crash report that shows where the crashes are occurring, which intersections, which stretches of roadway, that type of thing. So that's coming soon. And then down the road, we're working on what's called a heat map. And I think we're going to try to make that public, so you can go on your computer at home and you can see where the crimes are coming. It's just another visual where people can see where crime activity is occurring. So we're excited about that. We're I guess trying to come in with the times. So, and then last, do you have any questions about that? Anyone?
Is this all tied into the Zerker system?
Yes.
The one system that you've been working on since 2019?
2019.
Okay. Are we paying for that, the township?
No. I don't believe
it's a god-awful system.
It is. It's been very difficult for as you know.
Yes.
Actually, the smaller agencies, navigating the system, it has been difficult. What the side benefit, or the good benefit is these reports. So we haven't gotten these reports yet, and that's one of the big things that sold the whole project was heat maps and containing all that data. So we're supposedly boiling down to that. As far as usability, for the officers, I know it's difficult. I know they struggle with it. It's much different than what we grew up on. You and I did, with quick forms, but unfortunately, quick forms is just not supported anymore. So
I've talked to some people, and we all agree we would go back to handwriting reports over that.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
So and on to your point last month, Joe, you had asked about the speed devices, and you wanted to know, I think the question was, what was the comparable from 2021 to 2022?
For crash-wise,
Well, for speed.
yeah.
And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the raw data. I was only able to get 4 months of 2021. So what I did do is I broke down the percentage of speeding, and I could verbally give you those. I didn't have the chance to get them to Nancy before the agenda was set. But so in 2022, Secord north of Stearns, vehicles less than 40 miles an hour were at 63%. In 2021, it was, for that 4 months that the last 4 months of the year, it was 63%. So 2022, 63% of the vehicles were under 40 miles in 22 as well as 21. 41 to 45 miles an hour, again, 27% for both. 7%, so on down. The numbers are virtually the same for Secord north of Stearns. For Stearns Road, east of Secord, a little bit different. So in 2022, we had vehicles under 40 miles an hour at 78% of the total number of cars traveling through there were under 40 miles an hour. And in 2021, for the last 4 months, it was 74%. 41 to 45, it was 17% in 22 and 19% in 21. And then all the other numbers are very the same. And for Secord Road, south of Stearns, 2022 vehicles traveling under 40 miles an hour were 63%. In 21, it was 65%. 41 to 45 miles an hour in 2022 is 27%, and in 21 it was 26%. And then it's virtually the same for the rest of the speed classifications. So in a nutshell, it's been pretty comparable from 21 over to 2022.
Okay. Any more questions? We appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Like the TVs.
Be ready for all 100 slides.
Okay. Up next is public comment. We're limited to 5 minutes for board agenda items, and state the agenda item.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street, Temperance, Michigan. Looking at the sheriff's report, 274 traffic stops. That's really good. 95 traffic tickets. Excellent. I think they were doing, if you look at the Bedford Press, they were doing a study here that says that speeding is causing a lot of accidents. I don't see how that's something new, but they decided that they were going to do 2 months of patrol where they're going to enforce speeding laws. And you can see that there was a tremendous increase in the number of traffic citations issued by the Sheriff's Department. That's pretty good, isn't it? Then you look at some of the activity, and I think the bottom line is there's still some room for really improvement. You have one officer there. Let me see where he's at. He had 26 and a half hours on patrol, wrote 14 tickets. That's pretty darn good. I want to talk to that guy. He's doing a great job. There was another guy, he had 23 and a half hours on patrol, wrote 27 traffic citations. What I'm trying to bring out with this is that this has always been the problem here. I've been saying this for 10 years. So we have speeders here. This is not something that's an anomaly that took place in January of 2023. This has always been the same thing here. So if you have this kind of enforcement and this kind of concentration of officers that are working there to try to bring down the speed, I think you'll see the kind of activity we should be having every month here. So I'm just saying that, I think it proves my point that there's plenty of speeders out here 24/7, 12 months a year. I used to pray for weather like this when I was a state trooper. A winter day where I could almost work in shirt sleeves, clear skies, a little bit overcast, dry roads. People are out there, they're driving like it's the middle of the summertime. So there's plenty of activity even in here in the wintertime and stuff when the roads are in this kind of condition. Obviously, when they get a little bit slicker and stuff like that, people slow down. But the activity is here. I'm glad the Sheriff's Department stepped up to the plate in January and started doing a good job, and I believe they can continue to do that. So I want to compliment them on what they've done, and I think it's proven my point to some degree that there are plenty of speeders out here in Bedford Township, and with a little bit of concentrated enforcement, I think we could start bringing down the number of traffic accidents, and I think that's what the goal of you people are heroes when we contract with the Sheriff's Department. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. I'm going to start from the bottom up, so 8, E, D, and C. I'm hoping that on 8E, that we could get some more information as to why they are asking us for money. I know that they had to part from the school, and they do receive other money, so it would be interested to know why we give them money, and then it would be nice to have some sort of report from them routinely. 8D, the direction on to move forward with the ordinance. I've been here before. I've been at the planning department before talking about the noise ordinance. We have certain ones that seem to get to have their concerns addressed and others that don't. The bottom line is the entire ordinance needs to be redone. There shouldn't be any selectiveness. There should not be any holes to go down, rabbit holes or gopher holes to go down to go around this ordinance. There is the main focus. The major ordinance says if it bothers somebody, it's not allowed. And ideally, I brought this up at the last meeting, and there was concerns that, you know, there isn't any noise. The businesses are the noise, and your neighbors are your noise. The problem is that the rules have to be such that they're followed. We don't need a rogue ordinance department that's running around deciding what is and what isn't allowed, what is and isn't acceptable.
Stick to the agenda.
And the police department, in the meantime, is stuck having to deal with these because the ordinance people are not around on the weekends. So they have every loophole that they can use, 200 feet from this and so forth and so on. So the rules need to be very basic. And so I'm just wondering who, what, and why suddenly this issue's coming forward when it was first noted in 2021. Onward up to 8C, the CIP. I don't have a full understanding of this. I'm hoping we get a whole lot of information. Again, was this building built on the monies that were saved under this process? There was a resolution in 2020 and the minutes from 2021. I'm not sure why it has taken us so long, but this echoes back from Nancy Tinnevery, as to what took place. But I see that the rules were in place since 2008. So this doesn't show well, really, when it comes right down to it. And then lastly, the 3B, the minutes from the ARPA. I'm disappointed and concerned with what the final decision was. I would encourage all residents to read those minutes and look at what has been handed over to one person to make some major decisions on. This is the same office that took authority to spend $2,500 on dead deer retrieval to $10,000 without authority.
The agenda item, Ms. Keener, I'm going to end your public comment.
It is. Handing authority to the person who took money from the park board without authorization and spent it.
Going down a rabbit hole. Where's your
Without
rabbit ears?
authority on a pocket park, and I'm going to come up with a
Where's your rabbit
rat
ears?
and a crooked carrot.
Hey, you're going to need that carrot and rabbit ears. You're going down another trail. Okay.
I'm just
Any
saying
more
that
comments from the
they're-
public? You need to stick to the agenda items.
I am.
because you're not
Are
getting
your
special
minutes
treatment.
not on the agenda and the ARPA?
You're
We
going
don't get
down
to
another
talk.
rabbit trail. Stick to the agenda item.
We don't get to talk after you guys
Finish
talk.
up. Come on.
I have finished
Well,
up.
you're-
I'm just saying that we need to have some concerns with what's going on with this ARPA committee. So,
You have
thank you.
concerns with a lot. Okay, any more comments from the public? Okay, moving on. Thank you for your comments. Okay, 8A, vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $97,063.82. Fire District Fund, $28,822.83. Police Fund, $264,534.80. Fire Equipment Fund, $1,396.12. DDA Fund, $1,583.22. Library Operating Fund, $5,275.62. American Rescue Plan, $101,634.01. Whitman Drive SAD, $728. Building Department, $45,124. Sewer O&M Fund, $87,784.29. Trust and Agency Fund, $142, for a grand total of $634,088.71.
Support.
Okay, motion supported by Ms. Janczak. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Janczak?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Prony?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, approval to change the year-end date of the Bedford Township 401A plan. Ms. Hirschberger?
So how Bob has explained it, for some reason it ends on January 31st. We would like to change it to our fiscal year to end on June 30th. It doesn't cost us anything to change this. The auditor would appreciate for us to do this too because it makes his bookkeeping a lot easier. But they won't do it unless this board approves it, which is the resolution attached. So if there's no questions, I'll make a motion to amend the 401A plan, changing the year-end date from 1/31 to 6/30, effective this year, January 1st, 2023.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Janczak?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8C, amendments to the Bedford Township Board and Administrative Policies Manual. Ms. Rector.
Good evening, Jody Rector, Planning and Zoning. This directly is associated to the Bedford Township Board Administrative Policies Manual and working in updating the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. I did locate this document. I did not, unfortunately, know it existed beforehand. It was adopted in 2020 and then amended on April 5th of 2022. If you look at the sections that I've highlighted in the packet, the reason being, first, if you look at the section of, it starts with section 4.9, the capital improvement plan. It does then just explain what the improvement plan is. I'm looking to amend 4.10 in the scope. It says a capital improvement is defined as a major project or purchase that is generally not reoccurring as a long expectancy that costs more than $50,000. On February 2nd of 21, the Township Board adopted the presented CIP, and in that project plan, it states $5,000. As long as we are all on the same page, because I am presenting it to the Planning Commission tomorrow for a recommendation to come back to this board. So I would like to have all the documents updated, is why I wanted it on and requested it to be on this agenda. So my desire is to have that to $50,000, change to the $5,000 as previously approved by the Township Board. Section 4.13, project request, and working in getting an amended document. You will see the example that I have provided, 2023-2024 CIP project descriptions presented to the Planning Commission. I would like to propose that section, one section of the project name, department description, assessment and justification, anticipated life expectancy, requested and or proposed scheduling, project rating, and the project rating is whether it's essential, desirable, acceptable, and those are all defined in the CIP now, and then the project cost and then the total. I would like to change what is presented in the existing document to what we've worked on to amend in the new amended CIP. In 4.14 in the public hearing, when the first original CIP presented, there was no public hearing, and I did provide the language from the Michigan Enabling Act, does not state anything about requiring a public hearing, and I did talk to MTA, Mr. Selden, and he confirmed that that is not a requirement for the Township Board to actually have a public hearing. If the desire is to keep that, I I would like the decision tonight so then we can move it forward because we need to be able to have the allocation with this year's budget. And then exactly in 4.15, if the desire is to remove a public hearing, that language in that section would need to be removed.
Any questions, comments? Mr. Steiner?
Just a quick comment. The example you show with all the new categories or similar, the only one that makes me wonder why we wouldn't still have a method of financing or suggested method of financing.
When you get the new amended CIP, you will see that that is part of the new language, that there are several other avenues. If the funding is not in the CIP, there is funding of course, requesting to the general fund, loans, grants. There are other options within the CIP, and that is where when the head of the department, and I apologize because you don't know the language of the CIP that we've amended from what was first initially approved. There is a head of the department now, and in the asset language, it will show who's the head of the department, and they're going to have to be the one requesting it, and then working with the elected official that oversees that department to determine where the additional money, should it be needed, will come from.
So basically, you're going to leave it up to the CIP graph to capture it instead of putting it in the manual.
Correct. It's when you see the asset list, you'll see that it's all listed on there. And then, of course, the township board is going to be the one making the decision where the remainder of the money comes from. When it goes to the planning commission, they're only going to make a recommendation from the department heads.
So I would say that when that comes forward from a department head, that if they don't have even an idea of the funding, then it doesn't go on the file until that happens.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mr. Gore?
So on 414, regarding the public hearing, how long have we been having the public hearings for the capital improvement plan?
Well, the original plan was adopted, and my apologies because I wasn't totally involved in all of that, so I'm learning it as I've been digging through the documents. Ms. Hirschberger and Mr. Peroni adopted with the Township Board on the 2nd of February of 2021, and that document did not hold a public hearing for the initial adoption of the CIP. I do not believe the Township had a CIP before that date.
Okay.
There had been processes, I believe, in meetings with committees before that date, but that was the first initial actual adoption of a CIP.
Any more comments, questions? Okay.
Oh, I could probably give Joe a little more information. The manual was set and approved, and then a CIP was worked on and set and approved, and the CIP was set so quickly, they didn't even look in the manual to see if it contradicted each other. So now Jody's finding the contradictions between the two.
Okay.
And just make sure, and you always do, that it doesn't have to be a public hearing, but it would be at a public meeting. So there's a distinction between the two. So the board always has to approve it after it's recommended by the Planning Commission, but the enabling legislation in the Michigan Planning Act does not require a public hearing per se. But you're always going to have a public meeting, and decisions relative to that will be conducted or made at a public meeting. So you could amend 414 to have that language and that it's at a public meeting.
Okay. I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposed changes to the Township Board and Administrative Policies Manual presented by the Planning Department. And even though it's in the Zoning Enabling Act, we will remove the language that says a public hearing, but just for the record to leave in there that we have at a public meeting. Other than that, as written.
Okay. Support. Okay, motion supported by Mr. Monchai. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Sperger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8D, direction on whether to move forward with an ordinance amendment regarding new language to allow for soft background music on business patios.
Again, this was presented on February 16th of 2021, and a motion was made by Peroni, seconded by Gore, to move forward to allow Leonard Graham and Goldsmith to work in conjunction with the planning department and draft some new language for this board to take a look at. We've been working and gathering information in the planning department of different communities and trying to come up what we think as a planning department with concerns that had been addressed to our department regarding noise, and create a policy or a process for business owners who have an approved patio, because we do allow patios with conditions. And the process we came up with is, of course, requiring a public hearing, and amending the section of the ordinance in a C1 where the patios are required. We would add language. Please keep in mind this is just proposed language. I have not worked with legal directly. We tried to save funding and do a lot of the work in our department, speak with legal on some of our suggestions and get some feedback. But the request was to bring it back to this board before moving forward. Of course, this will require an amendment to the language text amendment, so it will require a public hearing before the Planning Commission. As a planning department, I just didn't want to spend funding if the desire of the board was not to move in this type of direction. A business would be able to expand an approved outdoor area requirement on their private property to provide outdoor speakers with a submitted and approved outdoor speaker special use, only approved permit, and a special, subject to several regulations, included to but not limited to a one-time special approval use, review, approval, and a permit, and require an annual permit to confirm there's been no enforcement issues, no complaints with the Sheriff's Department. And then require a submitted plot plan, which is required for an outdoor patio for the approval as submitted. Lot lines and dimensions, streets and sidewalk areas if they're available, driveways and parking lots, number of parking spaces, because outdoor patios are included in a requirement for the number of parking. Any existing buildings on site, seating and gathering areas, alcohol consumption areas, entrance and exits, layout of the outdoor dining area, including anticipated number of seats, lighting plan, landscaping plan, number of outdoor speakers provided, where they will be located and all facing inward to the patio, and the hours of operation. A lot of areas we looked at, I'm going to say Ann Arbor area, because a lot of their strip mall areas where they have outdoor patios do abut some residential. Some of theirs were from the Friday of Memorial Day to the Monday of Labor Day, and allowing them from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The process would be they would submit for their outdoor patio, show where it's located, provide all that information. It would require a fee to go to planning and an escrow. Should there be any enforcement issues, the township would have an escrow balance to cover any additional cost. And then should the Planning Commission make a recommendation, it would come to the Township Board for a decision and then move forward with a permit from the Building Department. And I have provided an example of the outdoor patio special approval. And then I did provide a outdoor speaker approval permit application, which includes the owner's signature, the business owner, because not all property owners are the business owner of the location, the building department signing off, the ordinance department, and the planning department. I'm just looking for some further direction if you want us to look working closer with legal and getting this more into format for a public hearing, or any thoughts or input that you may have moving forward. But I would like to at least have some direction for business owners that are asking, because at this time, to amend the noise ordinance is in several sections of the book. It would be very costly to sit down. Legal and I would have to sit down together and spend several hours looking, because once you make that amendment for where the noise ordinance is, we have to hit every section of the ordinance. It's in the general code, it's in the zoning, it's in almost every section of that entire 3,500 page book. So I'm just looking for some direction. I would like to be able to have something, if a business owner is at least looking to have outdoor speakers, that we can have something either to provide for them or a direction.
Mr. Goldsmith?
Thank you. First of all, Jody did an excellent job researching this. Very good job.
Thank you.
And whenever you have competing land uses, and I think I went through this before when we've been talking about it, you know, you've got residential zoning districts butting up against our C1 districts. Anytime you have amplified music, you're going to have complaints, and you're going to create an enforcement issue. But if you want to move forward with this, it has to be, in my opinion, very narrowly drawn, and Jody has set the framework in place for that to occur. So this is a special land use approval matter. It requires an amendment to our zoning ordinance. As she said, that requires our planning commission to basically present a recommendation to this board after a public hearing as to what the ordinance would look like, what the amendments to the ordinance would look like. Jody's absolutely correct that when we start this process and put words on paper, we're going to have to coordinate with noise ordinance requirements, which is a general code ordinance as opposed to the zoning ordinance. And our noise ordinance requires some revamping. One of the hardest ordinance prosecution cases to prove is a noise ordinance violation, even if you have a meter, which we no longer have, which needed to be calibrated at least annually, and it's difficult to prove those cases. So I happen to agree with Gail Keene that sometimes simpler is better when it comes to noise ordinance and enforcement of noise ordinances, having tried those types of cases. So probably more information than you wanted to hear from me tonight, but she's done a good job, and the next step is direction from the board as to how you wish to proceed. But this ordinance has to be carefully drawn because I see complaints coming from neighbors because of the amplified music. And so you have to decide, are you going to allow amplified music? Are you going to allow a live band? We didn't envision that. Jody and I didn't envision that. Are you going to allow someone with a acoustic guitar, non-amplified? So my experience is, my dad used to say, give them an inch and they take a mile. So we have to draw this very carefully so that doesn't happen and it doesn't become an unmanageable enforcement problem. So that's all I have to add on it for your consideration.
Comments from board members?
Phil, you're absolutely right. Somebody's going to take that mile. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It will happen. I mean, no matter how tight and how short up we make a noise ordinance, if we allow this, somebody's going to push the envelope. You've seen it. I've seen it. I've been on the receiving end of it, going to some of the calls. We've had a couple businesses in years past that really had some loud music to all hours of the evenings, and neighbors would be calling. And this is going to open up the door for a lot more of it. So at this time, I would be against making the amendments.
Any more board members? Mr. Bruning?
So Jody or Phil, whoever, even Paul, any of you guys who can answer me this. So what are the rules right now if we did nothing and left it as is? The businesses could do whatever they wanted?
No.
No, they can't do anything.
Outdoor amplified music at all. So like,
Yes.
say sidelines on Secor Road, they can't have any amplified or outdoor speakers on their patio for their patrons.
Yeah, the language says no amplified sound. So anything amplified, such as speakers.
Well, so like over last year with 734 at the yard just opened up and they had the outside bands going on. They weren't allowed to
It's
do
not
that.
permitted. We do allow for 4 times a year. You can get a special use permit for a special occasion through the ordinance department, and I believe it's four times a year. I'm looking at Trudy to see if she confirms. I think 4 times.
Yeah, for parking lot
Or like
events,
a parking lot events, and
events like
if someone had a band. Now, you can always have music indoors, and so that was part of why we looked at, when the language was for outdoor, I would say ambiance music, we looked at it as speakers, because if you had something indoors at your location, you could have speakers that would play it out, have the music outside as well. I will say I did further research for the businesses in our area, and I think there is one location that actually does not directly abut a residential. One parcel over from it, but there's only one location that doesn't actually directly have competing land uses.
When we amended the ordinance, Todd, to allow for outdoor dining, patio dining, we specifically, because we anticipated, we were trying to get beyond some issues that had been created by people allowing outdoor dining without an ordinance in place. And there were complaints, noise complaints relative to music and amplified sound and music. So we specifically, in that ordinance amendment, stated that no amplified music or sound of any kind could occur on those patio dining areas. So it's something that these establishments would like to have. They've been asking about it for a couple of years, maybe longer. So that's just what you have to decide, whether you want to go in that direction.
Jody, could you explain to the board too, because I get calls about Forest View. You know, how come they can have outdoor music? How come they can do what they're doing? Could you explain, to the public and the board the difference?
Yes. When Forest View was initially way back, had outdoor putt-putt and golf, and then the volleyball courts came in. And before my time, those were all part of that location and site. Mr. Kinney has since then gone through special use approval. He has special approval for all of his locations. He has strict requirements on the times he can have the music. It was all part of a project that was submitted as a plot plan with setbacks from the residential. You'll see that there was volleyball courts in the back on the southwest side. Those have since now are just the outdoor gaming area, and the other court shuts down, I think, at 10. But he is very restrict, and it was part of a special approval with an entire site plan that was brought in showing all of his volleyball court areas, outdoor dining areas, his patio area, sound. And I believe that any complaints, concerns that were before Mr. Kinney's time of taking over have been addressed.
So I think I'm the original one that brought this to you because business owners come to me and I personally think they should be allowed to play amplified music. But I get the boards, I don't know how many people are concerned about it, that it could be taken advantage of. And, they could have, that more amplified music, but my vision and my thought was when they come to me, it's, hey, they want to have speakers in their areas that are playing low-key music, so it's not dead noise outside and everybody's listening to each other's conversations. So if there's a way that we can draft it to where you feel it protects the residents but also protects the business owners so they can have successful patios, I think we should move forward with it and have Phil work directly with Jody and look at how other communities are doing it. I mean, they do it everywhere. We're not... This isn't anything new, where they're playing music on patios. But I do agree, I could see, where they get a band one night and it's louder than normal amplified music.
There's a way to draft it. It will be an enforcement issue because it's going to all boil down to decibel levels. Anytime you have amplified music, it's going to be who's in control of the knob. To crank it up or crank it down. I wouldn't think you'd want to allow bands at all
That wasn't
or
the
live.
thought when we did this. The thought was
Yeah.
a speaker with
Yeah,
low
yeah.
amplified music.
So I think it would be drawn to not allow that, and if somebody wanted to have a band, it would be limited to those 4 occasions annually where they could apply for a special permit for that purpose only. So it can be drawn narrowly and closely if that's the board's desire. Jody and I can put that together.
What's the board's thoughts? Because I feel like we should move forward with it personally. Just have them drafted in a way to where you can leave the bands out. But
I do agree. It is nice when you're sitting outside to have music and stuff like that. However, Phil, no matter how many attorneys you get involved drafting something up, somebody will find a loophole and will push an envelope. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It will happen. And that is my concern. It might not be some of our local business owners, but if a business sells and an outsider comes in and thumbs his nose up at our ordinances and things like that, it could create issues.
There's no question, no matter how tightly drawn the ordinance is, there will be enforcement issues related to it. Maybe not through a loophole, but just somebody not obeying the letter of the ordinance or trying to push the envelope. I mean, we've all seen it over the years, so there are many instances of that happening. So, but it's all just all in accordance of what the board thinks you would like to see in terms of allowing that type of activity for the outdoor dining establishments that are currently allowed.
Mr. Bruning?
I just have another point to add. So, like during the times where this noise is going to be a problem, it's going to be the hours when our ordinance department isn't even working because they don't work nights and weekends. So if someone would call and make a complaint,
We would deal with it the next day. I mean, if it's the ordinance, if it's something that we want the police to handle, we could have the police handle the noise issue. They handle noise issues all the time, so I'm not really concerned so much that we're going to get an influx of complaints. I think it's something if we want to move forward with, we move forward with it, and we do the best we can do to handle it. But I think it's something that the businesses need, and I think it's something we could draft in a way that works for both fairly. So, do you have a question? Go ahead. Stand a sec.
If we did go with this, I would have a suggestion for the businesses that did apply for this, and if they were granted, I think it would be appreciated by some people, or if it's ever questioned, whether they have the approval or not, to have the permit that they receive posted so that way it's available if somebody does complain or has a question, they can say, they can show them, yes, here's your permit, we have it posted. You know, that way, if there is ever any doubt or any issues, it's available.
I believe we could add that if we desired to move forward to require the permit to be posted at the facility, they have to post their liquor license and any other permits they may have. So I don't think that's an issue.
Well, too, we don't want to not move forward off of assumptions.
And we can put some kind of revocation on it, that if there is a complaint, whether it be the sheriffs have to be called out, that business owner has to come before the board and state their case of why that was a complaint-based requirement for the sheriffs to come out to the location even if it was over the weekend time when we don't have any staff of enforcement, and then have them explain to the board what happened on their aspect, at least give them the opportunity to speak on their behalf as well.
Yeah, and you could put something in place too, where 3 strikes, you lose your permit or something, or something like that.
I believe having some type of enforcement, it should be a one-time thing because you're getting a special approval. If a special approval is denied or not in compliance, you lose that special approval. So I would believe that if we did it as a special approval use and the township board granted it, that it would be revoked, whether it was that weekend, Monday, say the township board doesn't meet for 2 weeks and they get on the agenda, then they would, if the township board's desire was to reinstate it. But in a special approval, you either comply or you don't.
Okay. Mr. Steiner, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, so a couple things on there. Again, the Joe brought it up first. I was going to mention the enforcement portion. I can say that probably a good percentage of the ordinances that are written, you can find somebody that's going to violate every single one of them. So you're always going to have that person that's going to push that envelope of violating. There's a lot of ordinances people can simply get away with because they maybe just right around their house, and maybe they're good friends with their neighbors, so it doesn't bother them, nothing happens. But if a new neighbor comes in, buys the house and says, wait a minute, what's going on here? The enforcement part, unfortunately, by dealing with it the next day, and I know this Forest View came up, and again, Mr. Kinney did a really good job over there with a lot of compliance issues over there. But if we can't send somebody out when it occurs, it's my word against his word. And somebody goes out the next day and says, oh, it's quiet. Or they can even go out the next evening, and even if they had a meter, they could say, well, it's quiet, it's within compliance. But that doesn't tell you what happened the night before. The other thing is the music will probably draw more people out, so now you also don't just have the sound ordinance for music, it can increase your levels for people noise as well. So that's something to think about too. Granted, the patios, obviously they'd be limited in size just like a lot of other parts of the facility. And Jody, you've done a really nice job as usual, with a lot of suggestions and ideas. I mean, quiet music shouldn't be an issue. Having, and we've got some pretty good business owners too that I know they're going to want to comply if we do this. So I think it should be looked at very closely. If we do consider, it's got to come back with a recommendation from the Planning Commission anyway to this board. I think we should investigate that at that direction. And then Jody, I did have a question. I noticed that you, in your notes, you said that under 7G, which is where all the red language is, but it says ordinance. So is that a combination of your work with ordinance, or does ordinance still have some input that they need to give in here, or?
Well, 7A is where you get into the detail of the plot plan for the outdoor dining area. But when we look at 7G, it's the outdoor dining area shall comply with the ambient noise. And that's where I feel that maybe the speakers and maybe Mr. Goldsmith can add some further information. But I think it's two separate things, because just because someone wants an outdoor patio area, they may not want to go through the steps of the ambient noise section to have outdoor speakers.
I would think just if we do go ahead, if it does get approved to go to the Planning Commission, that maybe we do seek a little bit just general input from the ordinance department, since they would have to somewhat enforce it, whether it's the day after or whatever.
And I can tell you I've spoke to Officer Cecil, and he feels that this, if we are desiring having the public hearing where everyone is notified 300 feet from the perimeter of the property at the Planning Commission to voice their concerns if they have any, but he does feel the same as everyone. It will be an enforcement issue.
Yeah, and like I said, obviously we don't have ordinance officers that work at night, so if you don't want to do it the next day, I mean, I agree. If you're not out there, it's words. You have to use the sheriff's department. Anybody else have any further questions? Okay.
All I was going to say is when the sheriff was here last, he did say that all his officers will have an ordinance book. They all know the ordinances. They all have to enforce the ordinances. So if the sheriff's department was called out, they would know to shut it down.
And I think if we do move forward with it, we could always get a meter reader and make sure one of the sheriffs, we keep it in the office and keep it calibrated. I don't see a huge reason why we couldn't do that.
I don't think we need one.
I don't think I would draft the ordinance to measure noise with a meter, because it's just too hard to enforce. And oftentimes, it really gets down to some minuscule things, wind direction, all kinds of background noise. I've been to locations where the noise is readily discernible. the noise can be aggravating, but yet when you put the meter out there, it's within the tolerance that's allowed by the ordinance. So I don't think we.
I'm just throwing ideas
Yeah.
out. Is there any way to put a trial to this of 1 year, and if it's a disaster, we could always revoke it?
No, because you're gonna have investment-backed expectations. People are gonna make investments based upon their special land use permit. What's better to do? Special land use permits are revocable if it's set out in the ordinance. Jody addressed that, and so if a violation occurs of a special land use permit, that violation can be brought to the township board. There's several ways to address it, but that special land use permit can be revoked by the agency who granted that special land use permit. So, which in our case would be the Planning Commission. So it could go back and it could be revoked based on a violation. So I don't think you'd have to do a period of time because you're going to run into due process problems then in court.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we move forward with legal and planning department to amend language to allow for soft background music on business patios.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Montry. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll?
Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
It's going to have to come back to us again, right? Yep. All right, I'm going to see what you guys come up with as far as the rules, and I'll support it to see what you come back with. Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
No.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye.
Okay, the motion passed 6-1.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. And you did do a very nice job on this, by the way.
Thanks, Jody.
Okay, moving on to 8E, approval financial support for the Bedford Senior Community Center. This was sent to my office from the Senior Center. We've been giving the 12-5. Gosh, for how many years? Trudy?
Quite a
Been that
few.
same for quite some time. They're seeking to see that it be up to 15-5. This is one of the few allowable things the township can do as far as donations. We can give money to senior centers. So here it is on the agenda.
Donation, it's an allocation.
An allocation, but you can look at it however you want, but we're give.
Right.
Yeah. So, any thoughts, comments?
We put it in the budget this year, right? I mean, it was approved in the budget.
Is 15-5 already approved?
I believe I thought whatever it was knocked up, was pretty sure it was approved. I don't remember for sure, but
I think you're right. I think we did.
I don't think it was 15.5. I think it was 15 originally they asked for. So there might be 15 in there. I don't remember right now. I'd have to go back and look.
of course Bob's not here.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it's not there. We can adjust it and put it there if this board chooses to go that way.
Definitely think we need to take care of our seniors.
Mr. Steiner?
I think Trudy's right. I think it was 15, but the other question is, so they mentioned a year 2023, but is this coming out of the 22-23 budget, or is this looking for the next fiscal year, which would be 23-24 budget?
It's usually immediate. We send a check as soon as this
Okay,
board
so it'd
approves
be-
it. So it would be this
so it-
fiscal.
So if we do have 15 in already, that's what we've budgeted.
Correct.
I'll make a motion that we increased the amount to 15-5.
Support.
The motion is supported by Mr. Gore. Any more discussion?
For 2023.
For 2023.
Still support.
And I will ask them for a report because they usually submit one when we request it.
Mr. Steiner?
She beat me to it. I was going to say if we get a regular report from them annually.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye.
Okay, motion passed 7-0. Comments from the public?
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street again. I had somebody make a comment that I talk too much about traffic citations and stuff when I come up at the board meetings. These two officers that wrote 14 tickets and 27 tickets, they fall right in line with what community policing is about. It's not just about police departments going out there making friends with different organizations. It's about police department having individual contact with people. And when you make a traffic stop, which is not always the best thing for the person that's getting stopped, and you treat them right and you treat them fairly, a lot of those people have never come in contact with a police officer before. Never. On one-to-one basis. And how you treat them people and how you handle that situation, which is stressful for them, goes a long way to community policing. I've been in a lot of situations where I've written traffic tickets. People thank me for the traffic ticket. And you know what? They've also brought information to me later on. So the bottom line is writing traffic tickets is not detrimental to be community policing. In fact, it's just the opposite. I think for sometimes it's something for people to get to see what a police officer can do one-on-one. If you treat them fairly and with respect, that person goes a long way to be a friend of the police department. So these people that are taking enforcement action, it's not always negative. It's always positive sometimes. That people, it helps the public. It also slows people down. And it also helps the person that gets the traffic citation. You know, if you get a traffic ticket, the next time I've heard people say, I can't afford another traffic ticket. Well, if you can't afford one, then start obeying the law. And so when people get that, sometimes that really helps them. And I don't think sometimes you really know just how much that does. So I want to commend these officers for going out there doing that. And I'm sure that they handle the public properly. And that goes a long way to making a positive statement for who police officers are and how they handle situations that are stressful. So I want to thank them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
New toy. Lamar Frederick, 3254 Deer Creek Drive. I would recommend to the board members that you get copies of the early ARPA minutes. There are some interesting comments in there. There's some interesting statements that are in there. The county had, in fact, offered to pay part of the costs of the culverts. I don't know if we ever followed through with that or not. We did? Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear something that happened right. So I would still get some other comments. There's some interesting. I hear comments at a couple of the ARPA meetings that, well, the library has a millage, so we don't have to do anything. You folks have a millage. You folks have revenue sharing. All those are tax dollars. So don't use that excuse anymore for the library. Either their projects are good or they're bad. Don't say because they have a library millage, we don't have to do anything. I didn't talk to this soft music thing because I really wanted to hear what you folks were going to talk about. I've worked with counsel for 25 years. I am confident he can write a pretty narrow ordinance. And he will look at all of the ordinances that might be impacted. And I'm sure he'll do a good job. Whether you're going to like what you see or not is something different. Because the question becomes, is this going to be somebody playing a flute? What are you doing? You don't like what I'm saying? You. In any event. And this is going to be a special use, I hear. I think Jody did a good job putting the information in front of you. But who is going to go there at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning from here to enforce the ordinance? There is an ordinance officer within 200 miles of here on Friday night, Saturday night. Nobody. So I suggest maybe.
Thank you for your comments.
One of the sentences be,
Mr. Frederick,
call the supervisor.
Public. Oh yeah, give me a call anytime. Go out there. Yep.
Ken Gagne, 8311 Lambert Street. I want to talk about the street between the Lion's Den and Food Town. We've been going in there quite a bit, dropping off stuff. That street is junk going into the Lion's Den. I was involved with Monroe Asphalt when it was tore out and the new put in at the Lions Den. I talked to a Monroe Road Commission fellow that told Darren exactly what he had to do for the curbing. And I said, is anything going to be done with the street? He said, that's going to be up to Bedford Township. Well, I think the Lions Den does a really good job. They've got a really nice parking lot. And it seems like, from what I've heard over the previous meeting, the township has quite a chunk of money. They're getting quite a chunk of money from the federal government. I would like to see them throw some money towards the Lions Den and get that section, if not the whole street, at least part of it. I think it'd be an improvement for the Lions Den. It would be an improvement for downtown Temperance. They've done a lot of roads around here. That would be nice if that chunk of that street would be upgraded a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay.
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. Number one, the current ordinance is what provides the loopholes. So if you're going to change it, the whole thing needs to be douched. Number two, let's remember the history of sidelines. The residents over there had a horrible time trying to control that noise, and this is why we have the ordinance. Number three, they must have the neighbor's approval before they get their permit. Every single neighbor has to sign off. Number four, quiet music doesn't need to be amplified. It's quiet. And number five, we have skyscraper development. So one of the rules, my neighbor had a problem. The person was playing music. She called the police. The police said, oh, I'm sorry, it's within the 200 foot, ignoring the actual the noise ordinance, which says if it bothers somebody, it has to stop. Oh, that noise is within 200 feet. The guy from across the street come home, and he called the cops and complained, and his got taken care of. So these are the loopholes. Neighbors hanging speakers on fences, pointing them at people's houses. All of this stuff exists, and there's nothing you can do. So maybe our school liaison officer, since we pay for these people, could be pulled in to cover these off hours and our weekends, especially during the summertime. Then we would not be bothering our contract people who are out there trying to take care of the crime, the speeding, and et cetera that's in the neighborhoods. This is a problem. The whole ordinance needs to go. It needs to be changed.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Josh Nearcore, 7948 Wiseman Road, Lambert.
Okay. Here you go.
Josh Nearcore, 7948 Wiseman Road, Lambertville. Two things. One, I was at the special ARPA meeting last week. A lot of good projects are on the list. Hope to see a final decision on that soon. That's a lot of money that should be used wisely. I hate to see it go to waste. That's a lot of money that could be used to do good things that we wouldn't have to pay for with the general fund either. And then the second thing, too, the Sheriff's Department seems to be doing a pretty good job, and I'm hoping to see that Telegraph corridor get cleaned up pretty soon this year.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Any more comments? Okay. Comments from board members? Mr. Steiner?
Gee, I thought I was going to go last tonight.
You want to go last? Okay, Mr. Montry?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate Andrew Hollinger, who's being recognized, or was recognized probably about an hour ago at tonight's basketball game for being the, I think, fifth in history Bedford basketball player to score 1,000 points in their career. Unbelievable young man. Like, he's a better young man than he is a basketball player. And just an awesome kid in our community, and want to just congratulate him. And then I would just agree that with Mr. Gagne, I think there's a lot of roads like that in our community that I'm sure the supervisor would probably respond. I don't want to speak for him, but that's the difficult situation with SADs, and how do you decide which roads in our community we're going to invest in and that's quote unquote unfair to other people who have paid for their SADs or whatever. I think there are other roads that I don't really care about fairness personally. I think fair and unfair is whatever. But I think there are other roads within our community, that section being one of them, that you can make a decent argument on that it should be something that we should look at. Whether if you can't get an SAD in there for us to invest in. So I appreciate the comment. That's all I got.
Okay, Mr. Gore?
Just thanks everybody for coming out, and everybody have a good couple weeks.
Rooney?
Thank everyone for coming out. Everyone have a good weekend. We have wrestling again this weekend. This is States. And also this weekend, Bedford Theater has Seussical going on, but it's up at River Raisin because our auditorium's getting the roof put on it. Other than that, everyone have a good time, good weekend, and that's it for me tonight.
Mr. Steiner?
So basically, I just want to say that Ms. Rector said that there's tomorrow night a meeting with planning. It is on the CIP. That is the only thing on the agenda tomorrow night, so it'll be a full discussion on the CIP. The packet that we've got for CIP has a lot of good information in there, quite a bit of detail, so looking forward to that meeting. They had a meeting a week ago. It was during the day. I had every intention to be able to make it, but could not make it because of work issues. So I think we're on a good track. Many years ago, and one of our current Planning Commission members, Tom Corvette, he was actually chair of Planning Commission, and that's when Mr. Jenkins was still here, and tried for years to push hard for CIP, and you know, Ms. Hershberg has been around long enough too that she knows too that it was always a struggle trying to get approval for funding. Now, a lot of times I will say that our budget was not in the kind of condition that it is today. So there's been a lot of major improvements to our budget. It shouldn't have taken us this many years, but it is what it is. We're finally there. I think once this starts, it's just like a 5-year asset management plan for roads. Get it started, keep it maintained, keep moving forward. And I think Ms. Rector, you know, she's probably going to be around for quite some time yet in planning department. And I know she's passionate about things that really she takes pride in. So I have confidence in her that she's going to really continue working hard on it. So looking forward to it, and we can get a lot of good input from this board down the road on that as well.
Ms. Janczak?
As of last week, I just want to let the board know, I have invested approximately just under $4 million with our investment company. I'm still working to see how much more, if any, can be invested in short-term investments. I also want to echo Mr. Bruning. I would like to congratulate the Bedford wrestling team for advancing to Team States that is this weekend. Good luck to those boys. And then I would also like to congratulate and wish good luck to the 7 Bedford wrestlers that have advanced to individual states taking place March 3rd and 4th. And those wrestlers are Tristan King, Nathan Gerber, Brock Jandasek, Noah Benor, Caleb Jagelski, Robbie Gossard, and Connor Green. They wrestled extremely hard over the last several months, and it's quite an accomplishment to get where they've gotten, and very proud of those boys, and good luck. Congratulations as well to Bedford varsity cheerleaders. They made it for the 2nd year in a row to regionals, so good luck to the cheerleaders. And then everyone have a great weekend, and yeah.
Okay, Ms. Hershberger?
I too want to thank Jody for all her hard work with the CIP and the other members of the Planning Commission that are working on this. I'm glad it's finally to this point. We're almost done. We almost have a complete CIP moving forward, and it has been a long road getting to this point. Want to remind the 29 residents in Bedford Township that happen to be in the Erie Mason School District, I will have an election May 2nd for those 29 people that can come in and vote. You can vote by absentee, or you can come in and vote. The precinct has been moved to the township halls, so it won't be at your regular precinct, and letters have been sent out to all 29 residents. Other than that, I just want to wish my mother Daisy, a happy 93rd birthday, just a few days early.
Okay. Like Mr. Montroy started to talk about with Washington Street, I believe it is, this board could never start fixing neighborhood roads. There's many neighborhoods that have pulled SADs and spent $10,000+ to fix their neighborhood roads. What a disaster that would be. We could never start that. There's 127 rough neighborhoods in our community. There's no way we could ever start funding neighborhood roads. Now, the program that we put in place to where we maintain them with crack seals, I think is a great program. It's a good incentive. And I think with what we're doing with the capital improvement plan to fund the projects through putting $1 million+ away, that's going to continue to grow over the years, so there's not bonding cost and we could borrow the money, is a great way to do it to keep the costs low. But I mean, you will, in my opinion, you should never see these boards fixing neighborhood roads. Got to stick to the local and the primary road system. We can hardly keep up with the dollars we have just on the local and primary system. So, $5 million plus has been deposited with the road commission for the Secor Road widening project. That is moving along. I'll be meeting with the Manica Smith Group on that here in the near future. We are meeting on the roundabout to go over some final details for that project. I've been told numerous times, and I've told them numerous times, the township board does not desire to spend any more township funds on the project, and I've been assured that we won't have to. So that is coming very soon. And just to update the community with the ARPA funds, the $3.3 million that's been allocated, we allocated, is it 50 or 60,000 to the park board for drinking fountains? I think it was 50. For concrete drinking fountains that last a lot longer, and so that'll be a nice addition to the parks. We decided to do a study through our community to connect schools with sidewalks to neighborhoods. So myself and Ms. Janizek and Ms. Hirschberger are going to take a ride this Thursday around all the community to check out the areas that we could potentially have some good projects. So, what's that? Yeah, we'll be with the township engineer as well. So, looking forward to that. Move forward on taking money to pay back the township hall. And then once we do that, we'll earmark roughly $700,000 to $800,000 for the road fund for future projects for SADs. And I'll be meeting this Friday to go over the building project to start that process. So yeah, things are moving along. Also, I'll be meeting with Manica Smith at Fire Station 3 this Friday as well. For the concrete project. So all projects that the board approved are moving forward. I also want to congratulate the wrestlers, the cheerleaders, and the basketball team, Mr. Hollinger, for all their hard work. A lot of positive things happening in the community. I think with the noise ordinance, I think it's a good thing. With the sound, I think Mr. Goldsmith will steer us in the right direction, and this board can always, if we don't feel comfortable in the end, vote no, and we go back to how we were. If it is an issue and we don't want to utilize the sheriff's department, we can always hire somebody for the first 6 months for night shifts for ordinance if we wanted to do that, if that's what the board felt they needed to do. We can do whatever we feel is necessary to get us through it. But other than that, any more further questions?
We can do whatever's necessary, so we can make the ordinance department change their hours so they can cover the weekend?
We could.
Oh, there we go.
We could.
Tentative.
Okay, any further questions?
Just real quick, you said for 6 months. It's really only the summer months when it applies, so
yeah, I mean,
for 5 months.
We could do this whole summer, hire somebody at $15 an hour to work nights, and
that's it.
Further questions? I look for motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourned.